Hello, truck.
Hello. That's looking pretty beautiful, actually, as openings to trucks go.
Yeah, we got a bulldozer.
Oh my goodness. Where are we taking this bulldozer?
Taking it to Carlsbad, the Mexican-American border on our left the entire time through this journey.
Sultry landscape.
Yeah.
This is not an area that I've spent too much time in.
I don't think I've ever been to Arizona.
I'll probably not be overcome with the uncanny the way that I was on our last recorded trucks, where we went through Portland and there were large chunks of it missing, and I found it very alarming. Yes, I have in fact been to Arizona, and if you ever get the chance... Whoa! Hello, sir. If you ever get the chance to go to the Grand Canyon, you should, because it's a big hole in the ground, and it's pretty impressive.
I hear that Arizona is a good place to sell goods.
Ooh, what kind of goods?
I don't know, that's just what the sign says over there.
Oh, yeah. Merchandise. Truly a capitalist paradise. Yeah, so this is going to be a bit of an unstructured trucks following the humdinger of a trucks that the last one was. I have spent the last week attending a lot of movies.
Yeah, man. What's the film festival?
Portland International Film Festival, or PIF.
Ooh.
It's one of the two big cultural things that happens in Portland. There's PICA and PIF.
Getting your PIF on.
Yep. And PIF has been going on every year since I can remember. It's the 42nd annual one, I think. So this is a film festival that is older than me. And it is stuffed full of culture. One of the first movies that I consciously remember seeing as part of this festival when I was a teen became one of my favorite movies.
What movie is that?
Which was Control.
Oh, yes.
The Hungarian subway movie.
I well remember.
Josh and I, one of the things that we did when me and Josh and Monica and Nick were first living together was
Sorry, everybody.
I basically sat them down and made them watch all of my favorite movies, which you know, to my credit, were pretty well received.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of movies, so.
We traded. I showed you some of my favorites too, which were which came to a slightly more mixed reception.
I would say so. That is one of the drawbacks of having very particular taste. In terms of movies and in plays, I often find myself resenting the time that I am sitting there if I'm not really sent. But I'm absolutely not going to argue that the Speed Racer movie is not an artistic achievement.
I forgot we did that one. God.
That goes on the list, doesn't it? Isn't that still
No,
on the
yeah,
list?
totally. That's an awesome movie. I just forgot we did it. And it's definitely... It's not a perfect movie, but...
No, none of these are.
It sure shines bright. Russian Ark might be a perfect movie.
Oh, Russian Ark is... I mean... You will lose feeling in your legs while you watch it.
Yeah.
Which may be a drawback to some, but it always feels like a relief getting to the end of it, but then again, I think that's part of the feeling.
Yeah. Sometimes art needs that endurance element.
So I'm going to list off my my favorite movies real quick. If you want to do this as well, feel free to, but I don't think that we've done this in trucks before.
Sure.
So my favorite movies are Control, which is a Hungarian movie about a boy who is going through or a man, I should say, who's going through the get in the robot Shinji phase of his life. He's encountered obstacles and so has descended into the Hungarian subway underworld to become a fare inspector and left his unspecified adult business behind. And he encounters a magical girl in a bear suit down there, and also an owl, and has to find and kill his shadow self. It's a really teenagery movie, in that sense, like a teenage boy movie, but it's a really good one.
Lots of really just staggeringly good environmental shots in there.
Yeah, and it's incredibly pretty. Like, this dude clearly fell in love with this subway system and shot it to its best advantage.
Have you mentioned already it's like actually shot on location in the subway?
Yes, it has one of those fun metafictional things. Metafictional intros are like a separate category of, or is like a trope in movies that I like. This movie begins with a spokesman from the Hungarian subway board or whatever saying, this was filmed in the actual subway. As far as this does not reflect actual goings on in there.
Yeah, that part of the movie is wild. Like, it feels almost like they didn't actually have to do that, and they did it as some kind of sly joke.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much the case.
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure.
That was certainly my interpretation of it. That's a bit of tone setting. That is a bit of a nod and a wink. But so that's movie number one that I really love. We already mentioned Russian Ark, which is famous for being a very long movie that is also one long unbroken shot.
Yes, no fakery.
That is the sort of its technical claim to fame, but I think it's also just a really beautiful movie.
Yeah, there's some real poetry in there.
Yeah, so you're moving around the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, and you're moving through time while you're doing that, being guided by this sort of essentially dead count who has opinions.
A French count, right? He's like a real guy who wrote a travelogue about his trip to Russia or something.
Yes,
and he was very critical of Russia in that book.
He is the Virgil to your Dante in this
in
this experience.
The movie seems to take the argument that he actually secretly loved Russia.
I think the movie is incapable of conceiving of not loving Russia.
Yeah, as
I think most Russian things are. But it's as critical of Russian history as anything that you're likely to see in a sort of contemplative sense.
Yeah,
and it's also just a trip, both literally and metaphorically. Then there's a movie called Afterlife by Hirokazu Koreeda, who has made a couple of considerably more famous films since. You know what? If I keep doing this is just going to be a list of movies that I've seen, which is not maybe ideal, but at least you've seen these also.
Yeah.
Anyway, Koreeda went on to make a couple of his sort of style now is movies about children in bad situations. That's kind of what he likes. Nobody Knows is probably his most famous movie. It was based on a true story of kids who were just abandoned in an apartment in Japan and how they, survived. But this old movie is sort of pictures a bureaucracy of the afterlife and is a mixture of documentary footage and narrative footage, and I love it.
Kind of the common thread between these movies is that they were all shot in a kind of peculiar or interesting way. Maybe Control not as much. I mean, Control's location shooting is definitely something special, but the other two have like something about their format that makes them unusual.
I'm always slightly disappointed in movies that don't have something in them that takes advantage of the form.
Yeah.
And that's partially because I'm a rube, and so like there are plenty of great movies that are taking advantage of the form in like subtle, and creatively interesting ways that are invisible to me. I like ones that put their movie making magic right up in my face and being like, this is unusual, isn't it?
I mean, I like that too. I showed you a movie like that, which I don't think liked much at all, called Enter the Void.
Oh God!
Definitely
so French. So French.
Definitely a movie with significant problems. Enter the Void, but unforgettable, I would say. Worth a watch if you can stomach it.
Images from it still remain, I would say.
Some of those images just go way too far. Way too far. But
I think
a film as a
oh,
kind
boy.
of no film has ever done it like that. A film as a kind of first person experience to that much of a degree that, like, I think even if you're a little skeptical of the narrative, it can't help but suck you in and make you feel like this is something that's happening to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a success as a movie. It's just like, and that is actually one of the things that I've been thinking about watching all of these movies after not watching many movies at all for a long time, is one of the things about a movie, particularly if you're seeing it in a theater, is that you're signing up to spend time inside that movie.
Yeah.
And if it's a really unpleasant universe inside that movie, even if it's like beautiful or good art, like I often go out being like, was that worth it?
Yeah.
I feel like I just spent some time in a tumble dryer. You know, I don't know if I was edified by that experience. But Enter the Void is also fun in a look at this bullshit kind of a way, which, you know, I think helps with that. Yes, the other thread that actually now that I think about it, the other thread that binds these four movies together is magical realism. All of them feature magical realism.
True.
I'm that kind of person because the other movie on my forever list is True Stories, which I think more people have seen, which is David Byrne's solo feature film, starring John Goodman as a man who just wants to find matrimony.
That movie is...
And a small Texas town of crazy characters, which could be and was at the time described as a New York art maven's condescending, you know, zookeeper look at American small townness.
Yeah, yes.
David Byrne is, I think, too much of I think that David Byrne is innocent.
It's far more
like,
than that.
Genuinely innocent. And I think that it's difficult to ascribe any kind of...
He would look at big city art world in exactly the same way if given the opportunity.
Yes, and it's not...
what elevates it.
It's definitely meant to be a celebration rather than a mockery.
Yeah.
But given who he is, it's also just fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
And
that's a great
features
movie.
The late, very lamented Spalding Gray doing a bit with magical crudité, salad appetizer, light show that remains, I think, maybe my favorite scene in any movie.
Yeah, man.
But so that's where I'm at. That's the kind of movies that I like. Weird filmmaking things, magical realism. And I found another one that I can add to my list, which is actually a stop motion film from Chile called Wolf House, or El Casa Lobo, which is stop motion that is done in this way. They've taken like a house, and the stop motion is done by continuously painting and repainting everything in it to create features on the walls in motion, and like this sort of adds into 3D sculpture, but you see the sculptures being constructed and deconstructed because it all sort of moves through time in real time.
Wow.
And like a more than I expected number of movies that I saw, it's about a Nazi in a way.
They're on the brain, I guess.
They're on the... Yeah, fascism is clearly on the brain right now. But this movie is about a Nazi child abuser, essentially, who fled to Chile and started this commune out in the middle of the woods, or jungle, I guess, because it's Chile. Exactly what you would expect when a Nazi starts sort of a back to nature style cult in the woods happened. And this movie is very oblique about that, but basically pictures basically tells the story through the perspective of somebody who escaped and sort of their process of receiving and inflicting trauma. And so in addition to being like a feast for the eyes and an incredible technical achievement, it is also just it's also like genuinely harrowing in a way that none of the rest of the movies on my list are. So I don't know. Maybe I'm finally ready to spend some time in the tumble dryer from like an artistic perspective, but it's not something that I would necessarily want to rewatch a whole bunch like I do with the others.
Sure. I wonder how I could see that.
You can see that through the streaming service Mubi.
Ah.
MUBI.
I signed up for a free week of that once.
I discovered, which
unfortunately my streaming service budget is definitely... Oh, will this work at all?
Oh gosh. Yes.
Hey. Yeah.
No. Tell me that's not an invisible wall.
I don't know that it is, but I think my wheels aren't on the ground.
Oh dear.
If you cannot start moving, a differential lock might help you, it says. Yeah, okay.
Maybe front wheel drive.
Okay, is that a thing I can toggle on and off?
I don't think so. I could be wrong.
That's
such an inconvenient little ditch. Holy shit.
Okay, so it's those wheels that are driving me. Yeah, they're...
This is the first tow that we've had in a very long time.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
In our Trucks Adventures.
I just needed some gas.
Well, you're going to be towed to the gas now.
It'll take me to Ehrenberg. I wonder where that is.
Wow. So what were you saying before that? Oh yeah, streaming services.
Just I'm paying for the Criterion Collection one now, which means Mubi is probably out of the question, unfortunately.
I was gonna say that the sheer frustration that I have of every single time I hear about a show that I might actually want to watch, it is being streamed through a service that is not the one that I am subscribed to.
Yeah.
There was a moment in time when I feel like if you wanted to watch TV, you could go through a single streaming service. Like that was Hulu for a moment.
Yeah.
And then everything went to shit.
Yeah.
Because greed.
Mubi had a movie that I really liked. I signed up for that week of Mubi specifically to see that. Do I have a windscreen wiper button? Yes, I do. I signed up specifically to see that Ryuichi Sakamoto documentary that I briefly mentioned in the music episode.
Sure.
Really good movie. I don't know where you can see it now. I don't think it's still on Mubi. But
I'm sure that something can be done. I mean, I'm still like weirdly loath to believe that you can't just see anything you want to at any time, but that's not really the case, particularly the further out you get into sort of the arty hinterlands like this.
Yeah. Just to briefly recommend this movie, a lot of documentaries about artists kind of take the form of just like, we found a bunch of people loosely connected to this artist or who just are notable in their own right and seem to like this artist and got them to say like they were a visionary, they were just really great. You listen to their music and it gives you a lot of emotions, and that's really what art is when you think about it. And then you like get some pretty good like stock footage of that artist doing their thing, and then you're back to the talking heads.
That's not the kind of movie that Ryuichi Sakamoto would have made about himself.
No, I don't think so at all. This one is really great. It's just a very kind of intimate portrayal of him working on the album that became not Out of Noise, that became Async, his more recent one.
Sure.
Shortly after receiving his throat cancer diagnosis and like recovering from that, like kind of rehabilitating himself into music making and just talking about his like the things that are currently fascinating him. You get some footage of like him working on early versions of some of those songs, which are tremendous. You get this, like one of my favorite moments I've seen in a movie actually is this bit where he this delivery is gonna be so late.
Yeah.
This bit where he like puts together an idea for a song and then like has like performs like the early experiments in creating the sound and just stands there and listens to it after it's all like in motion, and you just see this look come over his face like, this is it.
The actual creative process being documented.
Yeah. One of the better artist documentaries I've seen for that sort of thing.
Cool. maybe something in it for even those who are not huge Sakamoto fans going in.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
I wanted to talk about another. Actually, I do want to talk about particularly about another movie that I saw over the course of this week. Not because it was my favorite movie that I saw, but because I think that it might be. I think that our particular audience might find it the most interesting.
Yeah.
It is a movie called Justine Forever.
Justine?
No, Jessica Forever.
Jessica.
It's called Jessica Forever, and it's French. And a thing that I've noticed, PIF like makes me more culturally essentialist, which I think is like the absolute opposite of what it is meant to do. But Russian movies are really fucking Russian, and French movies are really fucking French. At least the ones that, you know, make their way out into the international sphere, right?
Yeah.
The art movies. And this is an incredibly French movie. It's putatively a science fiction movie. Which is basically, there's this group of young men who are societal outcasts because of horrible crimes they've committed, who are left to sort of live and forage in these weird depopulated suburb zones. And they're being pursued by government drones, like swarms of really poorly CG'd government drones that want to wipe them out. But they've found this mother figure named Jessica, who dresses them up in paramilitary gear and, you know, makes sure that they're well armed, but also like makes sure they have communal nap time every day, and is like both preparing them for battle but also trying to teach them empathy, but in this really cartoony way. And all of these people are essentially like 12-year-olds, like gamers, like the kind of people who you would think would, that's sort of like their deal. It's like they eat, you know, cereal for their meals and, you know, play FIFA essentially. But they're also like Mortal Kombat ninja warriors.
Okay.
In paramilitary gear, going around this weird sort of suburb zone, which also has people in it, which you don't like realize until the end because of how deserted it seems. And like the movie's visual aesthetics and like title cards are like, this movie's title card is in the Killer Instinct font.
Okay.
It's like if you took the sort of edgy 90s movies and made a French art film about edgy 90s like violent movies. It's fucking bizarre. And I think that there is something that for everybody in there, for everybody who is in our demo in there, because on one hand it functions as like a superhero film, which is also like a feminine, a feminine side, fanfic side power fantasy. In that like it's about superhuman feats of healing and empathy, but it's also this like incredibly simultaneously tender and like deeply satirical take on like emotionally crippled teenage boyhood.
This sounds like a whole lot of things.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I was feeling, you get into ruts, right?
Yeah.
Like, and this happens to me in my life generally, because, you know, I get into depressions and I come out of depressions in my life. But you stop consuming new art.
Yeah.
For a while. Like, you stop reading and you go back to the wells of whatever video games or podcasts or stuff that's like low impact.
Sure.
Which might be like low impact books for some people, or, you know, whatever. And for me at least, I do this and then I remember, oh, there's art. Like, and this happened to me this last time specifically when I went to write something and like a puff of smoke and a little moth flew out of my brain,
Right.
where there should be ideas, you know. I was like, shit. I feel I've been like stuffing myself with podcasts, but it's all like, you know, wrestling commentary. There's no meat to it, and as a result, there's nothing inside my brain.
Yes, I definitely know that feeling.
And so I went to see these. I was like, all right, I'm going to watch like 6 or 7 art films, and I'm feeling like, predictably, I'm feeling bloated and and somewhat bilious. But
it's definitely a jug that empties and overflows from time to time. We all know the feeling of going to a museum and having seen too much art in one short span of time.
There's like 3.5 movies that I saw here that I would have liked a week to think about, you know?
Yeah.
But you're like, oh, right, good art does like a bunch of different stuff at once.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like the thing about sort of the more pulpy stuff that we spend a lot of our time with is that it does one thing. And sometimes it does that one thing incredibly well. But like a good movie particularly, like
it can be like a damn kaleidoscope.
It can. Like there is like this most recent movie I saw is about, in order, the massacre of Jews in Odessa committed by Hungarians during the occupation of Hungary by the Nazis. Romanians. I do beg your pardon. And Romania. And it's about that. And it's about the process of making theater. And it's about the process of making the movie. And it's about, like, it's really about, like, really intensely about gender relations.
That's the one called
Romania.
I Don't Care If History.
That's the one called I Do Not Care If History Remembers Us as Barbarians, right?
It sounds like a dark, distant cousin of F for Fake.
I mean, there's a certain amount of overlap there. It's not quite that same kind of movie. F for Fake is another movie that I really love, by the way, and is totally worth watching. And another movie that is doing several different things at once. But this movie, just like, I think it's possible to walk out of this movie if you're, say, like my dad, and not notice what to me was like a pall of misogyny that floated over it, and that informed every single interaction in the movie. But the movie is definitely about 2 or 3 other things, and it's about the difficulty of making art that is anti-atrocity, which depicts atrocities because people like atrocity.
Yeah, the big impact.
The big impact move. God, really good movie, really funny, really cynical movie. This is a movie where it's also a movie where, like, and I don't know if this is how, like, the hipster artist class in Romania actually operates, because there was also like a local politician who's operating exactly the same way, but it's like dense with like Wittgenstein references and, you know, various quotations from, like, this director, like, you know, the director of this play at one point goes up to this bunch of like military like reenactors who are here to do this, who like do not know what the fuck she's doing, essentially, and like slams her hand down on the, you know, the sort of charts and graphs that they're meant to be congregating around as these generals, and is like, the map is not the territory. And they're like, you know,
oh man,
shit like that, right? But it's like it pictures this world where, I mean, and I, again, no idea how accurate this is, where like everybody is incredibly steeped in, you know, 20th century Western philosophy, and they use these, you know, very highfalutin concepts to argue with each other while at the same time being complete morons. It's really something. I'm gonna because I've just been spending this movie gushing about, or spending this trucks gushing about like movies that people are gonna have a really hard time seeing, even if they wanted to. The feeling, having done this, of being like, this festival happens every year. I didn't do it last year or the year before.
You're gonna do it.
There's so much art out there.
Yeah, like this whole time I've been thinking, like, I love going to theaters and seeing weird artsy movies, but doing that sure is like, it takes more work than like just seeing
This
the
felt like
latest.
a full-time job.
Yeah, it takes a lot more work than just going to see the latest superhero movie, which that sounds a little condescending of me, but I'm talking about myself here. Like, I still see every single one of these Marvel movies, and I enjoy doing it, but it's a shame that that has become my entire movie theater sort of time budget.
I mean, like, the thing about it is that even like a 3-hour superhero epic, right?
Yeah.
You know, to see an art movie, you have to go to not any theater, but the specific theater that does it, which is going to be further away from you and require more foo-for-ah
Sure.
than that, and they're not going to have the same kind of showing schedule, so you're going to have to like have a more specific showing, and the movie won't be around for as long, so if there's conflicts, then you're not going to see it.
Yeah.
But even above and beyond that, you have to budget time after a movie like this to recover, right, and reckon with it, and to spend and you have only a certain amount of psychic real estate, and if you don't spend some of that psychic real estate afterwards, like for a good long time afterwards, reckoning with and digesting what you've done, you're wasting the whole fucking experience, which in itself is probably going to be more personally and viscerally taxing, because it's, you're going to have to be thinking and engaged while you're doing it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just being entertained. So yeah, it's way more work. It's way more time and way more effort, even beyond the logistics of it. And so it's like entirely reasonable that one might spend ones that, you don't bother to do it. This is like the first time in years that I've like really taken a crack at this. And I don't think it's a coincidence that most of the people in the audience are old retired couples, like, who aren't doing much else. This is the thing that I've found across the board wherever I've lived, that the most of the consumers of high art are old retired white people.
Yeah, that's I recently went and saw a string quintet, and it was all old retired white people.
Yeah. One wonders, like, will this rising generation of old retired white people, the Gen X old retired white people, will they be the same kind of patrons of the arts? I mean, or are the Gen Xers who become wealthy not interested in this kind of thing? Because,
I'm sure there's a lot of variants. Is the easy
like
answer.
it or not, the boomers grew up on sort of arty culture.
Yeah.
That was kind of the deal there, and that's certainly not true of the folks who came after. I wonder if all of this sort of scene is going to, if not vanish, then at least become less well-funded and more niche.
It already kind of struggles in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Thinking about Tampopo, man. Movies are great. I love movies.
As long as we're talking about movies, yeah. I often describe myself as somebody who isn't really into movies, and that's because of a lot of the reasons that we've discussed here, is because being into good movies requires a lot of mental real estate. But also,
I'm always skeptical, of course, of like describing the ways in which this or that artistic medium has a special and unique power. But if we're going to do it for movies, it's that movies have a very particular relationship with time. Like, a book you can sort of force your way through, but if you're sort of dragging behind the book, then continuing to read it without like turning back a few pages or whatever becomes much more effortful, where a movie will kind of just keep happening.
Yeah. I mean, of course you can, in a theater at least.
Yeah. Theoretically, a movie will just keep happening.
The experience of seeing a movie in a theater, I think, is actually distinct enough from the experience of watching a movie by yourself.
It's true.
It deserves to have a sort of a
unless you
separate interpretive category.
I guess you can force yourself to not pause and rewind, but even then, that's a conscious decision you're making. But yeah, still.
I definitely watch movies in chunks while I'm by myself.
It definitely gives movies a very potent capability to be a sort of half-registered kaleidoscope of meaning in a way that Tampopo absolutely embodies perfectly.
That's a movie that is like totally open to you interpreting it as a series of wacky antics,
Yeah.
as opposed to a creative whole. If you don't want to, wrestle with it properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Just we've gushed about this movie before, but just so light and yet so dense with density.
Like good ramen.
Hey, so true, so true. It's a confection.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this has been our trucks about how watching movies can be good sometimes.
Yeah, you should go watch a movie, guys.
Go watch an art movie. Why not? You know,
see if Singing in the Rain is playing.
Happens, it'll be terrible.
See if Singing in the Rain is playing in an old-timey theater near you, because that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna go see Captain Marvel after we finish with this. That'll probably be
okay.
okay.
I'm probably going to go see Captain Marvel too, if not immediately, because the person who I want to see it with is a little bit sick at the moment, but soon enough. And I will probably not regret the time spent, and it'll also probably be sufficiently qualitatively different from watching these other movies that it will not even seem like the same process.
Yeah, it'll be like dessert.
Yeah.
Chugging
like
a Coca-Cola.
Like playing Mario vs. Rabbids, which is what I've been spending my time doing lately. I've been playing Baba Is You, and then for dessert going back to Mario and Rabbids.
That's a good, nice cocktail, I guess.
Yeah. One of them certainly
Both
is way
kind of
easier to puzzle out than the other one. Yes, kind of.
You know, in our movie marathon, sort of in our movie tradition, I guess, we planned on seeing but never ended up seeing Drunken Master.
Yeah, that's a confection movie. That's a dessert movie.
I can't fucking believe this counted as excellent.
I mean, you apparently weren't late?
Yeah, I crashed the truck, but not in a way that the game particularly registered.
The truck didn't sustain any damage from that crash.
I must have spent my own money on the tow.
Yeah.
So yeah, the employer was none the wiser. Amazing. A heist has been performed.
Nobody say anything about the way that you... I mean, the only way that this isn't realistic is that you would go to jail after attempting a maneuver like that.
Unless the tow driver was cool. He was cool, you know?
Absolutely. Nobody saw it. Nobody could reckon how you ended up in that position, what choices led you to that.
He would never have driven the truck off a literal cliff, so probably...
Must have been the magic.
Yeah.
Must have been fairies did it.
No way that was intentional. Just an accident.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thanks for watching our movie, I guess.
Yeah. Clearly, this one calls for an extra cinematic opening sequence.
Oh, man.
So... see this trucks at approximately June.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.